Hey there, I'm Amanda, and I'm a personal growth coach living in Toronto, Ontario. And I am so excited to share with Pearl today.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl again, and welcome back to another Conversations with Pearl. And I am so excited to have my guest with me today. As some of you have heard, I have a couple of friends in Canada, and here we are today with another amazing guest all the way from Canada. And her name is Amanda Kirkland. She is a self-professed practitioner of self-care. You guys know we love self-care. She is a BABE, which stands for Balanced, Authentic, Babe Extraordinaire. Narcissists and toxic relationships used to surround her like a magnetic field. She estranged herself from her parents and one sister almost 10 years ago. And today, she says her life is like 31 flavors of Baskin-Robbins ice cream. I just like the rocky road. I'm good with that. So the younger version of Amanda was obsessed with reading books and watching movies about the guilty. At one point, she thought she wanted to be a criminal prosecutor or crown attorney, depending on what country you were living in. Turns out she didn't have the grades or the stomach for it. So Amanda got into real estate development for a short while. Now she is she's now a personal growth coach, a yoga junkie, shopping fiend to the rival of Julia Roberts. Who doesn't want to be that? Obsessed a dog lover and the style at home wannabe interior designer. Amanda's clients are strong women, and she has a few men in there who struggle with toxic relationships and want to start living their best lives on the terms of their own and by their own rules. Welcome to the show, Amanda. So excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
So we were having some conversations ahead of time, so I know a little bit about your story, but what I'd love for you to share with the listeners is what brought you from being wanting to be an attorney and then starting to find yourself and realizing that you need to put some boundaries around your life and really to embrace and fall into what you see as your self-care. And so give us a little bit of a background of what led you to the path of doing what you're doing today.
Kind of came in the middle of the process or towards the end of the process, to be perfectly honest. I had a job in real estate development, senior level for almost 30 years. And the project I was working on was coming to an end. I loved the work I did. It was not a particularly healthy work environment or happy work environment. And I had to decide whether to stay in the industry or figure out something else I wanted to do. And in my early 50s, I didn't want to go backwards. I researched staying in that field, and I was going to have to take a substantial pay cut and then be reporting to various levels and commuting and working strict hours. And that's not what I was about. So I started going down the path of what do you like doing and enjoy doing, and what are you good at doing? And one of the things was organizing, doing, arranging, getting things done. So I had a concept of becoming a personal concierge, helping busy people. And I started working with a coach, and I didn't know that coaching involved mindset work and reframing things and learning about myself. And we had a conversation one day, and I was in tears, and I was about to say, to hell with all this, because she's like, what's your purpose? And I'm like, I don't have a bleeping purpose. And it was Kleenex after Kleenex bawling. And she pushed and pushed and pushed. And finally, it was like, I just flipping want to be happy. And I said, and I want people to be happy. I'm so tired. And I'm like, and the word authentic somehow came up. And although it has not served me well being what you see is what you get, I'd still rather be that than have Amanda at work and Amanda with friends and Amanda with loved ones. And something just started clicking and shifting. And then the universe started just dropping a bunch of breadcrumbs, and I followed them. And I got certified with a company, Avalon Empowerment. We do a lot of work with the unconscious mind. I just sort of filter that into some of my own, coaching programs. So I did certification with them through not even really research, through the process of elimination and honing in on who my ideal client was. Somehow the universe took me to working with people who are struggling with toxic relationships. And I shouldn't say it wasn't until then, but I suddenly realized that was the common theme in all the struggles I had from childhood forward. And it started in the family. And now I've been able to put some pieces together, about my parents' upbringing, etc., and what generational trauma is. So I understand a lot better, what happened to me and why I had the struggles I had. And if there'd been someone there to be able to show me these things and give me some tools and tell me something as simple as you cannot change other people, my life may have been very different. I mean, it is terrific now, but it took an awfully long time to get here. And I'm not a sort of cliche or woo-woo person, but obviously I had to go through all that to be sitting here and, invited in as a guest on podcast to share.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said too. And we have to go through. I love that you took a coach to get you to, to realize your passion and what you wanted, and to be able to say that. And, that was a blessing for you to have somebody like to show up in your life, because a lot of people don't have that opportunity that will push them to be like, what is it you really want? Like, what's that passion inside? Because I think what happens, and, we talked a little bit before coming on too about my background with my parents. I think what happens is, we, as kids, we believe our parents are all these be all, end all, and then we're supposed to do everything they say. And so we walk that life. And then when we become adults, and we come up with other challenges, we have that narrative in our head that, we've experienced, well, this is how I have to be because they're an authority or they're older than me, and so it doesn't serve us. And then we start suppressing who we, in the core, we want to be. We start losing, like, who does Pearl want to be? Like, what's Amanda's desires? And so, for the listeners, that's why it's so important to find that mentor, find that coach, or somebody that can be like, listen, what is it you really want? And like, make you break it down. And it's freaking hard work to do it. You're gonna cry, like Amanda shared, with tons of tissues. You're gonna scream, you're gonna, laugh, you're gonna do all these things. But if you allow yourself to like push through this and push through all the stuff you've put down in their belly for many, many years, you're gonna walk through the other side with like, wow, I wanted to become a coach like Amanda, or I wanted to open a restaurant, or I wanted to be the president of the United States, whatever that is. You're going to have this empowerment now that says, I'm going to go do this. And we were describing, we have what's called the Shiro League in our in a small group of women that I coach every Sunday evening. And these are things we talk about, is like, you have to deal with the stuff before you can really go and find and enjoy your joy. Yeah, you're happy. Yeah, you have some joy things. But if you don't deal with the stuff and really address the stuff, it's going to lead to other habits you don't want, whether it's addiction, whether it's eating issues, it's going to lead to other things. And Amanda, I'm so glad that you had somebody to help you walk through that, because now, like you said, you found that passion of helping others that have had these traumatic relationships and such. So walk us through that. I know we talked, part of your bio was about your relationship with your family. So as somebody who you and I have talked before, for those that are listening that haven't heard before, we were very blessed to adopt our son, Matthew, at a month old, and he's mixed race. And, my husband and I, we literally made a list of who, before we committed to bringing Matthew in our family, we made a list of who in our family do we have concerns with that might turn racist. And my dad popped up on the list some, but not high on the list. And then there were some friends. So we knew that bringing this child in, we were going to release people in our life. Never in a million years as a daddy's girl did I think I'd have to release my dad, even though he's way down on the list. It should have been a high priority in there. But, my dad came to live with us for a little bit after my parents' divorce. And then I found out later some of the things my dad said to my son, which were racist, which were hurtful and just not right. And I literally sat in the car when I found this information out and wrote an obituary to my dad being alive, like he's to him being alive as my father. And then I called my son, was Amanda, and I said to him, hey, I just found this out. I'm really sorry as your mom. I didn't see it. And one of the blessings for me was that I knew I raised him great. My husband and I raised him great in understanding forgiveness, because his comment was, it's not your fault. You didn't know. but I forgive him. And, that was really for me powerful. And even years later, at one point, he had said, Mom, if you ever want Papa to come back in, and I'm like, no, my boundaries are my boundaries. And, I wanted to teach my kids that. So Amanda, share your story and how you came to setting up these boundaries around your parents. And what are some of the things the good things and the bad things that have come from doing that?
Oh, the good things are how happy and light I feel. And finally, I guess with all the work I've done, it's brought an amazing relationship into my life. Not that I haven't had any relationships, but nothing like this one. So that's pretty awesome. You sticking up for your son and listening to that, I started to get a little emotional because it brought back a situation where we were at the farm for a holiday weekend, and there were friends over and their kids were there, and they were two kind of odd duck fellows, and they were very full of themselves and being pretty opinionated and a bit male chauvinistic. And I'm used to working in a male dominated industry, and I can hold my own, no problem. I was in the throes of an eating disorder. So chemically and mentally, I wasn't, balanced. And and I'd had a couple of glasses of wine because it was, a holiday event, probably on an empty stomach. And I went to my parents and I'm like, can you please tell them to stop? Like, can you talk to them or their parents? Like, this is our house. And I remember being really, really agitated. And my mother basically refused to do anything because it would embarrass her or them. And I was so distraught. I got in the car, and this was at night, and I drove 2.5 hours back to the city. So it was more important to keep up appearances than to stand up for me. And yeah, I've never going to say I don't believe in drinking and driving. I'm like, I'll have one glass of wine. That was it. They should have never let me get on the road. And they did. And, if I have to keep going forward, if I go backwards from there and forwards, whenever I came home and I was having a struggle, whether it was school, friends, a relationship at work, I was always to blame. It was never that somebody else's behavior may have been questionable or there was no support there. There was always something wrong with me. I wasn't born with the right coping skills. So that was kind of like, it was all covert, and I didn't realize all these things would have such an effect on me going forward. And, flash forward into the workforce. And like I said, I worked in a male dominated industry, had no problems, but I got triggered by a lot of people. And I didn't realize till I started doing the work on me that I was getting dressed every morning, ready to do battle and to get people to come around to my way of thinking, to change, to win. And, they say you don't know what you know till you know. And now I know, and it may sound really simple, but you can't change other people. And you do need to start to take accountability yourself, change the way you do things, and maybe it is boundary setting. So you asked that about the family. I didn't know the word boundaries probably 12, 13 years ago when I started setting them. I think I would have been too scared to set them verbally. So I stopped going to the farm, and I would only meet, halfway on neutral territory for Father's Days and Christmases. And I started putting boundaries on what discussions we could have. So we couldn't discuss money. We couldn't discuss weather. We couldn't discuss 3 yellow pills my mother took daily. We couldn't discuss my sisters who weren't speaking to me at the time. And one of those reasons is the negativity coming out of them at that point in their lives was just dragging me down. Anyway, there wasn't one particular thing that came to head where I finally went, that's it. I'm going no contact. Other than one of my sisters had an experience with them, sent a letter. And like I said, she wasn't in contact with me at the time, and shared some observations she'd made about my mother's behavior and my father's behavior. And I immediately opened up a private blog I'd written, sent her a few articles on narcissists and on being the black sheep, which is what I was, and the scapegoat. And I think within a couple of days of us back and forth, she said, she said, I don't necessarily agree with what you said to mom and dad, but I now but now I understand why. And then about 3 emails later, it was like, I'm sorry you had to go through all that. And what a long, lonely road and struggle it's been. And for one person to validate that, and now, in fact, I have had my cousin in England that, we've had some back and forth with, sharing some of the things she's gone through and understands about her family. It's not that I know I don't need validation now. can find most of that in myself, but to have all those pieces come together and know that there really wasn't anything wrong with me. And I don't know if it was when we were speaking before we started the podcast or at the beginning of this, who I am today is who I should have been if I hadn't gone through the things I did. That said, we all go through things for a reason. I don't necessarily think that's fair, but it happens. And I think I had to go through those things to now be able to say, I don't want someone to lose 25, 30 years of their life struggling. So I think I've said enough.
No, and you brought up a good point too, because, we look back and go, did I have to go through all of that just to get here? But I think it does. I think it, it helps define who we are. We have to go through whatever the stuff is we have to go through. And some of it really sucks. It's kind of like I described with my work with my clients that these goals, I'm like, you're going to climb a mountain, but at the top of the mountain, you have to come down. So you get to choose how you want to come down the mountain. You can fall down the mountain if you want to, or you can choose to say, I'm going to climb the mountain slowly. I'm going to take some lessons with me. I'm going to release some things that don't serve me. And when I get to the top, those are the things that are going to help me climb back down and not fall down. And so you can start looking at peaks and valleys in our lives as, okay, these are lessons I have to learn. And I can choose to let them define me, or I can choose to let them change me, and for the good or better. It's our choice, right? It's certainly our choice. And, and what's sad is that, and you and I played a TikTok for Amanda before we got on about this. Gentleman was talking about, there's never a story where you hear, well, parents don't have a relationship with their kids because, they were trying to save money, or they were trying to, do good things for the kids. But there's something about when children choose to not have a relationship with their parents because of their behaviors, because we've learned through our challenges how to set the boundaries, and that, if that person doesn't serve me, those of us that are the children of the parents that have got these boundaries around them, sometimes we're looked at as like, well, you're bad. Those are your parents. You should always love them. And I used to think that, Amanda. And years ago, when my parents first divorced, now my parents divorced, I think I was in my early 40s, maybe my late 30s. And I remember I went to a women's retreat at church. And one of the things we got to do was have a private conversation with our priest at the time. And I remember sitting with him and going, I felt like this at that time, none of this stuff was happening that's happened because that all came later. But I remember saying to him, I feel like I've got these two parents that are at each other's throat. They're divorced, but they're still trying to put me in the middle. And I don't want to be in the middle. And I'm just so frustrated. One thing he told me, and I have carried this forward always, and this is something you should write down, listeners, is that we don't pick our parents. Our parents are picked for us. But life is our ball game, and how we choose to play our ball game is up to us on what rules we make for the ball game. And so sometimes, again, we don't pick them. We love them, but sometimes they have to sit in the bench. And if you want to let them back in on the game off the bench, great, as long as they're following your rules. But if they can't find the rules, it's okay for them to sit permanently on the bench. It's not a problem, because you're not doing anything wrong, but setting boundaries, setting those expectations of how you will allow others to treat you. And, we have to do that sometimes. And Amanda, you share the example that's what you've done too in your case. And, I've many times, like right now, my son who passed, Matt, he has a really good friend he's in the middle of this situation with his daughter. And he is one of those young men that you would want your daughter to marry. You would want to be the father of your grandchildren, because he just loves his daughter so much. The challenge is the girl that he's going through all this custody issues with. They were never married, but they're have this custody issue. Is she's using the daughter as like this pawn. Oh, if you want to see her, put gas in my car. If you want to see her, I need groceries. Like all these things. So he has an attorney, but I had a conversation with him. I said, I need you to get some cojones. I need you to step up for her because she's 5 years old. And if you don't do something now, these next 2 years and what she's gone through so far with these 5 years, they're going to define the rest of her life on how she expects to be treated, on how she should, cower down to people, on how she can be used. And, I'm getting through to him and he's fighting, but, it's so important that we do understand that this childhood trauma that we have as we get older, it still carries with us. And then when we become these adults and we do this work like you've done, Amanda, and I've done, it brings it back to the surface. And like I said before, we can choose how we want to move forward with it. You can choose to have a relationship with whoever it is. It could be a sibling, it could be a parent, it could be a friend, whoever that is. You have to put those boundaries around those relationships. And you're in control of the gate, whether the gate is open or not again. And if somebody, has anything to say about it, trust me, I had people, and I'm sure, Amanda, you probably share too, where we've had people say to me, like, I can't believe you're talking or treating them. I can't believe you'll call them, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm okay with that. And listeners are probably going, I'm going to address this too. I've had somebody say to me, well, what happens if he dies? And I'm like, well, in my book right now, he's already passed because nobody that was my father would have treated my son that way. So really in my book, he has passed. His name is just XYZ name. And if he passes, I wish him well. I don't want any ill will on him. But, those are things that as children who have boundaries around our parents or siblings or whatever that is, I don't want anybody to think that we don't think, gosh, I wish it could be better, because certainly I wish it could be better, but it's not. And it's not our choice. It's our choice to have the boundaries around us, but it's their choice to do the behaviors.
100%. Yeah, it is. And, at the beginning, it was really difficult explaining to people. I'd run into someone, they'd say, how are your parents? And I'm like, I'm actually estranged from them. And the look of horror, I remember it was one of their friends once that they probably hadn't seen in a while. She just looked disgusted with me. And then it happened another time, and that woman almost looked like she could get it a little bit. But I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm disappointed. I had a picture perfect childhood. We really didn't want for anything. And I didn't realize how much, I went home every night for 3 years in high school and bawled my eyes out because I was so unhappy at the school. I didn't like it. I wanted to go to public school, not private school. And I was told I almost gave my mother a nervous breakdown. Like listen to what your kids are saying to you. I don't know where some of this stuff from these podcasts is so cool because the weirdest stuff just kind of pops out. But it was, I wrote an article actually for local magazine I contribute to, and it was called Framily. And I remember years ago, my therapist telling me that it's the exception, not the rule, that family are friends. So, society thinks it should be one way, and it is really frowned upon. But, my sister and I have talked about it before. If it was an abusive relationship, are you going to tell the male or female that they need to go back because they were married? Because that's what you're telling me to do if I need to go back to a dysfunctional family dynamic that I know is not going to change. So the answer is no. In my coaching, my go-to is not to tell someone to estrange themselves. Some of my clients are already at that, have done that. Some are just having difficulty in those situations. I know in one of my coaching programs I was in, there was another girl in there, and much younger than me, had a very difficult relationship with her family. And she started using the tools that we were learning and trained in to adjust her behavior. And I remember her coming on a call one day, and the relationship with her parents did a 180. And it was pretty emotional for me because at the time I was like, oh, does that mean you're supposed to tell me that if I change or I should change my behavior and open the door again? And that wasn't what was being said, but I've seen firsthand how just making adjustments in your own behavior can change the trajectory and the outcome of a lot of situations.
And I think that's a good point too. It's not to say that it can't change, but they also have to want to make those changes. They have to meet you where you're at and be like, okay, can we talk? Can we have a conversation about, what's on your mind? And, my husband and I, in our relationship, one of the things we when I first met him, I didn't know communication. So when my parents would get in an argument, they just wouldn't talk for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden everything was fine. I'm like going, what happened? Like that was the example I had. So when I met my husband and, we had disagreement or something like that, I would just ignore him. I would just shut down. That's all I knew. And then he started going, well, if you don't tell me, I can't fix anything or help you. I can't understand what's on your mind. And so he got to the point where he's like, well, she's not responding, so I'm going to answer for her. And he would start having conversations for me and he would answer for me. I'm like, I wasn't going to say that. That's not what I was going to say in that situation. And so I learned communication because of him, but I didn't have that example. So, when with my mom, my mom got very adamant and she held this, this animosity to me because at one point in my life, my dad had come and lived with us. And in her mind, for whatever reason, I was in my 40s. I don't have to tell her he's living with me. That she just was like, well, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to tell you things. I mean, to the point that she had surgery and things like that. And I used to say, I don't tell him things about you, and I'm not going to tell you things about him. To the point that when he got married, I didn't call my mother. It's not her business, right? So she happens to call me when I'm driving home from his wedding reception. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, driving home, because I was doing that. I was driving home. Well, I heard your dad got married. I'm like, oh, he did? Like, I just was like, I'm not going to confirm or deny anything. You're not going to pull me into this emotional thing, right? And she's like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, you don't want to know things. So example A of I don't tell you things, but she still held this. And you and I talked about this before we got on here. She still held this, animosity to me to the point that my brother had seen it over a year ago. And he called her out on it. And she admitted without saying it, she probably thinks it's because she let her dad move in. I'm like, I didn't even have to say that, Mom. You just confirmed your feelings. And it's fine if you were, to me, like I told her, it's fine if it upset you. And at the same time, you can't hold it against me. I'm in my 40s. I'm not a little girl that has to still do what mommy and daddy say. And I think for my situation, that was my parents' issues too. And I think to this day, my mom is still that way that, well, I'm your mom. We're 20 years apart from each other. You need to speak to me in this tone. It's like, or treat me this way, and so, it's not to say we can't mend these relationships. Like I've worked with my relationship with my mom. Just had something recently that came back up. So she's got a little more boundaries around her again. But to listeners, what we're saying here, Amanda and I are saying that it doesn't mean you can't mend a relationship. But what we're saying is, as Amanda said, we would never, ever ask somebody to go back to an abusive situation. So why would we expect children or anybody to go back to any kind of relationship that they were treated in a narcissist way or treated, in an abusive manner? That's not healthy for that person. And I think what happens is we look at those relationships as, well, this is parents and this is every other relationship. And we have to look at them that they're all the same, I'll give another example. I had a really good friend. We became fast friends. I was everywhere to be seen with her. She was in a relationship that ended. My husband and I opened our doors in our house for her and her son to come stay with us. And she went away on this retreat and something happened. And when she came home, I asked her about it because I was concerned and some things that she had brought home with her. And her comment to me was a very, sad thing about people dying all the time. And I was like, yeah, no, that doesn't line up with what I believe in. And so I asked her to leave. And again, that was because I have boundaries. And I think one of the things we have to take from this episode today is that you have to have boundaries and they need to be healthy boundaries and they need to be around relationships as well. And so, Amanda, what I want to know is, as you work with your clients, like, how do you help them accept, because it's hard. We're kids, no matter what. We're still that little girl inside, that little boy inside. We want our parents to love us. There's always that, that feeling of, why don't you love me? Or why don't you treat me better? And so as we walk through what we're talking about, it's really hard because that little girl or that little child is still going, but what if sometimes? So, it took me a while to go through no more what ifs. This is what's happening. And so how do you help your clients walk through that acceptance and that reality of relationships, especially with parents that are, possibly have to have these strict boundaries around them?
A lot of it, first of all, it takes time. It's not a matter of just, I have an ebook that's 4 secrets strong, gritty women need to know to rise above toxic relationships, where I there's something on boundary setting, saying no, communication 101. I mean, it's fine to read the stuff and be taught that, to put it into practice repeatedly. That's one of the reasons coaching is great, because you've got, we walk beside our clients and we hold them accountable and we don't take their shit, and we put consequences in place, if they're not going to do the tasks or, use the new strategies we've given them to deal with certain situations. I think so. There's practice, there's, having somebody holding you accountable, working with you, because you could read all the books in the world, listen to all the podcasts in the world, do all the armchair therapy in the world, but it doesn't quite get you over that last, I guess, hurdle when you realize, I mean, not everybody wants to heal and get better. And then I think the other big part, is starting to, it's changing the mindset and knowing that, in the case of parents, they did the best that they could with the tools they had at the time. And then, you take it one step further back, and, what I kind of had pieced together about my grandparents and then how that affected my mother, it starts to make sense. So, when you realize, it's another saying, the person is not their behavior. There's stuff that's gone on that causes, I've gone into boardroom meetings and everybody's sitting around the table, egos checked, I'm supposed to run it. And then there's, I'm going to say the guy with the short man complex, no offense if there's any male listeners, who starts being overbearing and all about him and, pounding his chest. And the first thing I do was try to put him in his place, or I should say was put him in his place. And, there's a force of wills going on. I walk into a room now and I see someone behaving that way, and I think about what's behind that behavior. And I'm not going to react. First of all, I'm going to respond differently. My body language would be different. And this is all things that, I wish I'd been aware of when I was in those situations. So, those tools and giving, real life examples. And that's one of the reasons, not that I love what I'm doing. I do love what I'm doing, but I'm not just trained in some things. I've got the lived experience. So I can take, clients through certain scenarios and what ifs, and like, okay, so you tell me what happened in this particular instance, and then we can walk it forward and how you want that to look tomorrow or next time.
Yeah. And, I also too, like, to understand, I love how you talk about, you help them walk through the what ifs and break it all down. I'm 58 years young. And so I always talk about, oftentimes, like, our parents didn't have great examples of, because my granny worked all day and my grandfather was away at the war, and then my dad, same thing. My dad was, did 3 tours in Vietnam, and then he's coming back and forth. And I've had people say, well, because of the war. I'm like, no, that's not an excuse to treat me and the way that I was treated or my son was treated or what have you. But to understand that, I'm glad today there's a lot more, and I think if anything came out of COVID, there's a lot more mental wellness awareness, because we talk about these things now, and we talk about getting our kids help, and we're doing it younger, and watching young moms, like, on these YouTubes and TikToks and stuff, teaching their kids at little ages to, like, positive affirmations and things like that. And like you said something earlier, is like listening to our kids, like, that's something, like, right now, if there's a parent listening, if I could say anything and back up what Amanda said as well, is that we have to listen to our kids. Like, even though they come home and you think, oh, that's so silly, or that's just kids being kids. No, listen to it, walk them through it, ask them how that makes them feel. Ask them, well, what if it was, ask what ifs, ask the questions that aren't yes or no answers, like, inquire on their feelings, inquire, well, how did you feel when Johnny said such and such to you, or whatever.
It's so important not to invalidate. And,
right.
in hindsight, I know that's what was happening to me with friendships, in the family, in the workplace.
Yeah, and it's really important. I remember when I was first starting the work field, I would get very emotional sometimes. I would get upset, like, to the point my boss was like, okay, you're allowed to come in here, but you're not allowed to cry. I'm like, you have to validate. At one point, I remember going, you have to understand how I'm feeling. I was trying to explain, but my thing was, it was the communication. I didn't know how to communicate when something bothered me, like I said, from before I met my husband. So yeah, we have to as parents really listen and ask questions, open the conversation. I'm actually part of a great nonprofit called Unsilenced Voices, and it brings awareness to human trafficking and domestic violence. And it's one of the things is, have your eyes open to what your kids are doing, be aware of what's happening around their surroundings, and be involved. Oftentimes we let them sit behind their game systems or what happened. And sometimes that's what's right in front of you, is that, that issue. And so I like that you help also the clients understand it takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not something that you go, okay, I'm going to do this and you feel better. I mean, there's times, that would I like to call my dad and be like, hey, yeah, sure. There's things that happen. And, my younger son is dating an amazing girl and he'll probably get married. He's, they're trying to buy their first house. Those are things that, as our grandparents, I would love for them to be part of, and and they're just not. And for me, when I did set these boundaries around my parents, one thing I did to make sure is, especially with my dad, I'm like, I'm not telling you I don't want you involved with your grandchildren. You are more than welcome to be involved with them. They were younger, so they weren't 18 yet. So, but there'll be some boundaries around that. I'm not going to keep them from you because I want them to know their grandparents. But my dad chose not to, so that was his choice. And oftentimes we get forced to make a choice that we're not wanting to make, but it's the best thing for us. And so I'm glad that you also reminded us that it also takes time, just like just with ourselves, just having a relationship with ourselves, in the Shiro League, we talk about, finding the strength and becoming strong enough to put yourself first, to overcome being a people pleaser, because, for so many years, you may have been that person that said yes to everybody else, but no to yourself. And so, as you walk through and you become stronger, you start feeling that feeling of happiness inside. Like you get that, a little bit of that joy starts stirring up and you start feeling happier because you're strong enough now to say, I have boundaries. I need my self-care. I'm not going to say yes to all this or yes to this situation. And then that ease, you become empowered. You have this new strength. You're feeling happy. You're empowered to say, I want to go start a business. I want, like Amanda, I want to go start my coaching business and share my message. I don't like being a stay-at-home mom. I want to go back to the workforce. You have that empowerment now that you feel like your voice can be heard. And then the R stands for radiant, where you're glowing up because you're stepping into all of these things that you have kind of put aside for a while there because you allowed everybody else to control your feelings. And then that O is you become that original self. Earlier, Amanda, I think you led to authentic self. I love original, but it's also known as authentic because I feel like we're always, that original person was always there, but because we go through things like relationships with our parents or relationships with loved ones or our friends or whatever that is, we push it down and we forget to nurture that. And as we start nurturing it, then we have this whole new outlook on life. And we walk around with our cape so tight around us that we can button it back because we've got this, this power of taking care of ourselves first. And that includes boundaries, like we're talking today with Amanda about, around family, jobs, whatever that is. And, it's really, really powerful. So I want to know, Amanda, tell me about BABE, Balanced, Authentic, BABE Extraordinaire. Walk us through that a little bit.
Well, it was originally bitch. And I can't remember what the acronym was for it, but it was BABE something, something, something. And as I started getting more into my coaching work and continuing on my own journey, it didn't resonate with me anymore. I've always been told I was unapproachable. A real estate agent I worked with a few years ago called me gritty. And it wasn't in a good way. It was in a negative way. And I kind of was like, okay, so I'm unapproachable, I'm gritty. And I'm not those things really underneath. People started responding to me differently. I'd post something on Facebook that was, I don't know, different than people saw me before, but I started getting like, oh my God, you look so cute. Well, the word cute and Amanda did not ever go together. Now, you know what? I can be cute and have fun and, laugh a lot more. So the bitch became babe. And it's not a stroke myself or pat myself on the back by any means. It's just supposed to be something fun. And I like using it in my signature because, it catches people's attention. I've had a few people that are like, why did you change it to babe? Bitch was so much better. And I'm like, because if I've got potential clients, I don't want them to be scared off that I'm what you see is what you get. I'm not formal. I'm very like chill and relaxed, probably sometimes too much so. But yeah, so bitch transitioned to babe, which was kind of just like I said, you were talking about original self. And I think earlier I had made the comment about, I'm finally being able to become and be who I was meant to be had I not gone through what I went through. And there's no crying over spilt milk. I'm, day to day, I'm moving forward. So I hope that answered.
Yeah, no, and it reminds me too, like the no crime spilled milk. I often tell my clients, life's not a remote; you can't rewind it. So you can decide how you're going to use it going forward. What's the TV show you're going to play in your life going forward, and or movie you want to play out. And so that's so important. So one of the things, Amanda, that in our Shiro League, which I said, this is a group of women. We meet from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time, and we work on things, that bring us joy. We work on overcoming challenges. We work on setting boundaries. All these great things that do with self-care. And so one of the things that we're working on right now with them is the word joy and what brings you joy. And so it's not just, joy, like they had to create a list of 10 things, and it couldn't just be, I have joy because I like my job. Well, why do you like your job? Like, what about it? What if you didn't have the job? Would you still be happy? We break that down. And so, Amanda, I have a question for you. And that is, if you had to give the listeners your top 3 things that bring you joy, what are they and why do they bring you joy?
Sun and heat bring me joy. Bet you didn't expect that one. Why? It just feels good, and it feels good to feel good, to have that sunshine, that heat hitting your body. And, normally when you're in that temperature zone, you're outside and you're free. The relationship I have now brings me joy. He tells me he loves me. He loves me more, tells me I'm beautiful. Not used to hearing those things. So that's that's really nice. And then my 15-year-old Yorkshire Terrier. And I'm getting teary-eyed over that one because she just turned 15 and she's been with me through all of this.
That's so sweet. Yeah. I
Sorry,
mean,
I didn't mean to go down that road.
No, you're totally fine. And let me just say to your boyfriend, yes, the warmth, I expected you to say that because I know you're in Canada, so I know it gets cold there pretty quickly. I wasn't surprised you said that. But, too, when we find somebody who loves us for who we are and they recognize that these beautiful people that we are inside, it's so overwhelming and so beautiful to have that in our life. And everybody deserves to have that in their life. And if you're not feeling like that, please reach out because I'd love to, help you walk through that. And then I get your dog. My son, when he passed last year, his dog Rico will be 10 next year. But our other dog, she's a Yorkshire Terrier. She's going to be, I want to say she's almost 15 years old as well. So
Ticket's a Yorkie too.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, and we know they're little and we know, we don't have a lot of time with them, but like, especially Rico, before my son passed, I did not want dogs sleeping in my bed. It was a no. And my son's dog Rico would sleep with him all the time. And so when Matt passed, all of a sudden, he's sleeping with me, and he really felt the loss of my son a lot. Like you could see him moping around looking for him, and he knew, like, it wasn't like before when he'd gone away to college, but like he knew this permanent feeling in the house. And so he sleeps with me every night now. So it's kind of crazy that that's happened. So but yeah, thank you for sharing those 3 joys. Now, here's a tough question. So we make lists for the grocery store. We make lists for things we got to do around the house. We make lists to for just about everything, right? But oftentimes we don't create a not to do list. And that list is of things that we have to stop doing because they're keeping us from going outside, spending time with, or finding somebody that's going to love us for who we are, and also enjoying, our little animals or whatever it is that brings you joy. So on that not to do list, Amanda, what do you have to put on that list that you stop doing so you can enjoy those things you love more?
Worrying that I've done something wrong, worrying about what other people think of me. And I I don't know what the third one would be. I think a lot of them are just about me always worrying I've done something wrong, and the people don't like me, which is kind of another way of what people think about me. Those were just so present in my everyday life for years and years and years.
Right.
Now I'll still get, activated or triggered once in a while by certain things, but I'm aware of it now. So, that's the other thing with the work with the clients is just bringing your awareness about certain situations. Like things would have taken me out for weeks at a time before that had happened. And I'd be talking to everybody about, my shit. Now,
Right.
when something happens, I can catch myself before I go down that rabbit hole. I can sort of run, how is it a problem through my head? And yeah, sort of get myself back in the game in an hour instead of, losing time and breath and dragging other people down,
Right.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, for me, my big thing is the shoulds, especially with the loss of my son. I should have done this more, should have done that more. We were very, very lucky to talk to him 20 minutes before he passed. So I was able to say, my husband and I both were able to say, we love you, So for me, had I not been able to do that, I don't know how I would have responded. And then also the day before he passed, he was here at the house because he was living with his girlfriend. So he was here at the house doing some stuff with my husband. And I remember like the fun memory I have is throwing him a bottle of water and it falling. He's like, I told you never had good aim, so those kind of things. But the shoulds is a big one for me as well. So I want to thank you for playing around because that's not always easy. And that's really what, in our Shiro League and our Shiro Method course, we go through those things. We create that roadmap of what's those joy, what's those not to-do list and to remove those. So I want to thank you for playing along. So now, Amanda, tell everybody, let everybody know. I know you have a freebie, so let everybody know about your freebie and also share with them how they can find you.
You can find me on social media, so Facebook and Instagram at Amanda Kirkland Coach. And I do have a freebie, an ebook, and that I mentioned earlier on, and it's 4 secrets strong, gritty women need to know to rise above toxic relationships without hours of therapy, in brackets. It's a quick, easy read. There's some tools in there. There's a couple of before and after scenarios that I alluded to one. Those are based on what happened in my life and then what the situation would look like using some of the tools that I have now. So the afters didn't happen to me, but they would have had I known what I know now.
That's awesome. And we're going to put all those links in so everybody can grab those. Just read all the comments. You can grab those. So now Amanda knows we're going to do better questions, better life cards right now. And so I'm going to shuffle
another hard one.
We did one earlier. So we're going to shuffle them. Amanda's going to tell me when to stop. We're going to read her card to her. So here we go, Miss Amanda. Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
So your question is, are your actions aligned with your words? So are your actions aligned with your words?
100%. Absolutely. Everything right now is all in the right place and makes sense, and the puzzle's all in one piece. So yes, I'm completely 100% in alignment. Actions, words, thoughts.
And, I got that from Amanda just watching her. So those that are listening, when you watch this on YouTube at Conversations with Pearl, you'll see I got that right away. I knew when I saw that card, I'm like, oh, I know the answer right away. So it's awesome. And so I just want to remind everybody, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And, we talked about a lot of some hard stuff here today, you guys. And if you're parents and you have little ones, you're probably going, oh, I hope my kids never not talk to me. And so it's never too late. It's never too late to listen to them. It's never too late to open the door of conversations. One of the things I used to do with my kids when they were younger is I created every week, each one of my boys, we had time together. So I would take them separately to go for lunch or whatever it might be. As my sons got older, my older son would be like, hey, Mom, do you want to go for sushi? And that's when I knew he wanted to talk. And when my younger one would say, do you want to go for a movie? That's when I knew he needed to talk. So create that table talk environment. And when you do that, make it so that no matter what they tell you, there's no punishment. Like, tell me whatever's on your mind. have an open mind and let them share with you no matter what it is. As they get older, it can be sex and drugs. Just know that's what that could share with you. But have an open mind to how can I help you in that? How can I support you in that? Because the last thing you want to do is not be a great listener for your kids in this world that we're in today. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. I want to remind you that if you want to, we still have a few spots left at our retreat. Our pajama retreat is September 14th to the 18th. We're in the Gulf Shores of Alabama. Easy packing. You can arrive and leave in what you come and go with. And all you need is a couple pairs of PJs and no makeup, because it's a no makeup pajama retreat where we're going to work on self-care, self-development, and learning some tools to keep yourself as that Shiro you are. So just remember, as you come into this world, you are this rough oyster. You have a lot of work to do to smooth it out and be able to open it up. But on the inside, you are this inner pearl. And I hope you go find your inner pearl to greatness. Have an amazing day. Hi, my name is Pearl Sharenza, and I'm with Women Successful Living. And I want to tell you a little story. You see, once upon a time in the middle of COVID, I noticed that more and more women were overwhelmed. We were having to balance households. We're having to become teachers. We're having to work our job while we're trying to become a teacher. We were sitting in our home with our children and our spouses or our loved ones and feeling overwhelmed. We were lost for where we're going to find space in our own house. So I was feeling that this overwhelm was stressing women out more, that they felt like they could not have a Calgon take me away moment. They felt like everywhere they turned, somebody in the house would find them, or their job wanted them on another Zoom meeting. And I just felt so sorry for these women as I spoke with them and felt the pain, because I too was feeling sorry. I was feeling sorry that I couldn't go out and do the things I love to do. I could go out, yes, and take a walk and sit on my front swing, but I couldn't go to the community meetings and the fundraiser functions, or go have lunch with a friend, or go to the movies with my husband, or just take a moment away from everything that we're responsible for as moms and wives in our homes, right? You become that CEO mom and you're running a household. But then if you're working outside of the household, not only are you a CEO mom, and if you're asking what a CEO mom is, that's a mom who is running the household. Because let me tell you, you're not sitting around eating bonbons every day. You truly are running a business of a home. But then maybe you also work outside of the home. And here you are, you're trying to balance working in the home, working outside the home. And then maybe you have children and you're having to learn how to become a teacher, because bless our teachers, they're trying to learn a whole new way of teaching through Zoom. And so as I spoke to the women in my community and my clients, I found they were also feeling all this overwhelm. They were becoming stressed. They were sitting in the home with all their children and their spouse, and they're going, I'm with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I love you, but I don't love you that much. Were you feeling that way too? So I found as they were feeling this way that I had to do something. And every day, about a month after into the pandemic, I decided to try something new. I decided to create a space where we could meet via Zoom. And yes, I know, another Zoom meeting, really, Pearl? But I just knew that was the only way that we could get together. And the rule was you had to go in a room where you could put a note in the door and say, I'm on a break. I'm on a timeout. Whatever you want to call it, you could make that note on your door. Because really, we have to take time for ourselves in order to really take time and care for our family, our loved ones, and our job the way we know we want to and we need to. So what I did is I created what we called our self-care Sunday evening. And it actually became Shiro's, is what we ended up naming it. Because we as women, we are the hero of the house. We're the hero of everything we do for our family, our friends, our job, whatever that is that you're responsible for, right? But are you really the hero for yourself? So that became important to me. So one day I decided I want to pour into these women. So I brought them together on a Zoom meeting. We met Sunday evening, 8 p.m. We finished up by 9 p.m. We just had conversations. What was challenging them? What was the pandemic bringing up for them? How were they doing mentally? Were they doing something to take care of themselves? And if you heard me before, I say bathtubs and taking baths are not self-care, but really during the pandemic, sometimes that's all you could do was get in a tub with bubbles and take a few minutes for yourself, right? So as we poured into them, I noticed that they were starting to enjoy the self-care. They were starting to be less stressed. They were starting to communicate better with their family and their loved ones, because they could communicate why they were taking time for themselves. they were able to communicate that it's not that I don't love being with you. It's that because I love you so much, I need time for myself. So on Sunday evenings, we worked on things about self-care challenges. We created a challenge of self-care where every day they had to do something. It could be something that took them 1 minute, or if they wanted to, it could be something that took them an hour. But it was their job to do something for themselves every single day. And then because of that, they saw that their family, they were worried that their family might make them feel guilty. So we started incorporating ways that they could do self-care for ourselves as we also did something with our family, right? So in some cases, we found that we had moms sitting and just watching TV, silly cartoons with their children. That's self-care, right? Or maybe playing a puzzle game or putting a puzzle together. And then when it came to their spouses, we found that they were sitting and finding movies on Netflix or playing cards, or even we gave them a challenge. We have a friend that has these great cards. They're called Better Questions, Better Life. We even would pull a card and have a discussion with our loved one around that card. And then as they were working from home, some of our professional women were finding that their jobs were having much more demand on them, that because they were home, they could actually kind of have more time they could grab for them. Oh, well, you're home all day long, so you really don't need to take a break. So they started finding that some of their jobs and their bosses were expecting them to give more. So we talked about how to set boundaries around our schedules. We talked about how to set boundaries around how much we want to be on Zoom. And as we did that, we found that the women were less stressed and they were actually performing their job performance better. They were having better and more improved relationships with their loved one, with their children. And some of them also had family that were in nursing homes. So we were creative on how to spend that time with their loved ones, but also making sure that they were taking care of themselves. So as we did this, I saw that it was a need that needed to continue. So even though the pandemic is, as we know it today, is over, I found that the women loved this so much, we needed to continue this. And who knew that 3 years ago when I started this, that it would grow into what we have today, this amazing community of women that we still meet every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. We talk about things that bring us joy. We talk about challenges we're having in our lives. We're talking about things we're having to overcome. We have some women that are struggling in their marriages. We're talking about how we pour into them and how to help them work through communication. We have amazing, amazing guest speakers that come in every month. We've had Jane Pilger come in and talk up to us about our mind and the neurological part of our mind when it comes to our eating and our health and sugar and how it affects our body. We've had Seth Santora come in and talk to us about the smile method and how we have things such as just the smile within us that can make things like mock acceptance, where we're accepting things because we think we have to accept them. Like, for instance, my loss of my son, Matthew. I never knew that when I created this group 3 years ago, almost now, how much I needed these women. And because I have this community of women around me, I met Seth, and Seth taught me about mock acceptance. And he taught me that, yes, I was accepting the loss of my son, but I wasn't truly believing that he was lost. And I was sort of like going through the motions. So ever since I have put this group together, this community of women, we have watched the women flourish. We have watched them have less stress. We've watched them communicate better with their loved ones. We've watched them put boundaries around their self-care so that they can achieve the things they want to, so that they can put their cape on first as they pour into their family even better. And ever since we've started this self-care Shiro group, it has grown where we now at our retreats, we have women joining us during our retreats. We meet every year. We have a retreat in September. It's a pajama retreat. You come in your PJs, no makeup. You have about 4 days at the beach, sometimes the mountains, depending on the year. We just have sessions and breakout groups on how do we improve on our self-care? How do we continue to communicate our needs to our loved ones? How do we find what our goals are and our visions are, and how do we bring those to fruition? Because how many of you ever sat back and said, I have this big goal and I really want to do it, but nobody believes I can do it. I want you to know that we believe in you and we know that you can do it. And so if this is something that you want to learn more about and come and enjoy a great way to end your week and begin your week, I would love for you to join us, because on top of our speakers, we also have an amazing meditation coach where she empowers us to sit down and just take some quiet time for ourselves and just be in our own space as we reflect on what we truly want within. And I am so honored to watch the progress and the growth that the women in this community have accomplished. And I cannot wait to see what's coming up for all of them and hopefully for you. And if this is something you would love to learn more about, I would love to invite you to come and visit us one Sunday evening. Like I said, it's a great way to end your week and a great way to start your week. What better to know that you've got a balcony of people sitting and waiting for you to join them, have a cup of tea maybe, and just do some laughing, maybe a little crying, but no matter what, know that you've got a girlfriend there to have your back. So if you're ready to check out the Shiro League, I would love for you to join us. All you have to do is email me at pearl@wsliving.com. That's pearl@wsliving.com, and I would love to connect you. I hope today you know that we've all come into this world. We're a little oyster. We might be a little rough on the outside, but on the inside, you have a pearl. And I hope you find your pearl to greatness today as you become the Shiro I know you are. My name is Pearl Sharenza. Do you know what your score is for your self-care? Find out today. Go to pearlssurvey.com. That's pearlssurvey.com and see what your score is today.